Welcome to another devlog for my still unnamed programming dungeon crawl management game. This week has been about half planning and half real work. There are scare quotes around that real, you just can't see them because you aren't reading the script. The scare quotes are there to express my deepest apologies to every project manager who's ever had to deal with me. I'm pretty excited about the planning though. I'm not going to talk through everything, but I will say that it charts a path towards a playtestable demo in the future. I'm not sure when in the future yet, but I'm now sure that it will be a finite amount of time in the future, and I wasn't sure about that before. The rest of the work was about setting up infrastructure to support the exploration and spatial progress I've planned out. I'll talk about that in a moment, but first, if you're new, this is a game about controlling a group of characters as they explore dungeons and bring back loot, which you use to upgrade the town, which makes the adventurers more effective, etc. Rather than focusing on high-level management of pre-designed AI characters, the core game is about programming the characters yourself using a graphical programming environment, or, for the truly adventurous, a low-level WebAssembly API. The players will be able to play the game solo locally, or upload their AIs to a server for asynchronous multiplayer competitions. The whole point of this project is to capture the unreasonable excitement of writing a little toy simulation and watching the agents live out their simulated lives, but, as a game. So far in these devlogs, I haven't showed any movement outside of a single enclosed level, but the game actually has an arbitrary number of locations connected together via exits. The locations all share the same clock and continue to simulate even if the player's attention is elsewhere. For the performance-minded among you who are interested in how all of this scales, the simulation is currently single-threaded, and I'm going to stick to that as long as I possibly can. But if I do eventually need to parallelize, then the unit of parallelism likely won't be the locations, but the agents themselves. The world is immutable during the phase where the character AIs decide their actions, and then, once all characters have chosen their action, the mutations to the world are calculated from those actions. This means that the actual AIs are highly parallelizable. Parallelizing action resolution would be trickier since each action does mutate the world state, but it would be possible to do if it was absolutely necessary. But all of that is a can of worms I would like to keep firmly closed for as long as possible. Okay, back to locations. The game will consist of a central chain of locations, where the focus is on using programming to deal with increasingly complex situations. I'm going to try to avoid explicit programming puzzles. Those can be super fun, but they aren't what I have in mind for this game. Probably because I'm self-taught, so my focus has always been on solving practical problems. Well, I suppose I spend a lot of time solving impractical problems, but not doing exercises. For better or for worse, no one has ever made me sit down to do exercises. So there won't be a level, for instance, where you have to build an efficient sort. I have 3 locations roughly planned. The first is what you've been seeing in the devlogs, where the focus is on finding and processing resources, which can be done by individual characters working independently. The second is an area where characters must cooperate to process larger resources, like logs, so they have to organize into teams and coordinate. Third, there will be an area where the focus is on maintaining access routes by building bridges and protecting them from wandering hippos, because I really want there to be hippos. Then, finally, there will be a boss, which I will give you a sneak peek at from a much earlier prototype. Areas in the central progression are separated by simple gates, which can be unlocked using keys the player will access by making progression through the game's tech tree. Currently, areas are rendered separately, but in the final version they will appear seamless. That's just going to require some refactoring in the rendering code, which I haven't gotten to yet. I will try to deliver this aside as calmly as possible and not fly into a frothing rage. Why did this gate take longer than anything else in this video? Why don't I understand Blender's nonlinear editing well enough to make a simple animation of a door opening? Why will Godot only import half the animation, and then later none of it at all, for no apparent reason? I don't know. But simplicity is best anyway, I suppose. I will come back to this when I've forgotten about the pain. Other than the areas in the central progression, there will be side dungeons. These will be more focused on combat and traditional dungeon crawl mechanics. They will also be regenerated each run. When a character enters the dungeon, a timer starts. While the timer is running, any character who enters the dungeon will enter the same dungeon as the first character. That way you can collect a party to use for the run. After the timer runs out, the entrance to the dungeon will lock and no more characters can enter. The entrance will only unlock when all the characters in the dungeon have died or left. At that point, the dungeon will redo its procedural generation and unlock, ready for a new run. That's it for this time. There's more in the plan to go over, but I'll wait until I've actually started implementing it. I'm going to be traveling for a few days, so this project is unlikely to get much attention between now and when the next video would come out. But I would still like to keep up the roughly once a week cadence, so I'll do something. possibly a walkthrough of writing a basic AI using the low-level API, similar to the walkthrough of the visual coding system I did last time. But this one will be a lot of staring at Rust code in a CLI text editor, which may or may not be everyone's cup of tea. But if it's your cup of tea, subscribe and join me next time. If it's not, you should probably subscribe anyway because you're here at the end of the video, which means you're interested in this project. Or maybe you're just passed out in front of your computer with autoplay on. Either way, cheers.